We're here at Blizzcon, it's Tempo Storm, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Ben Thompson, the art director for Hearthstone, and Catherine Morgan, the software engineer and developer for Hearthstone. So thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Let me kick off and ask what BlizzCon reveals about this expansion should players be paying attention to the most?
There's a lot of fun stuff coming up in Rastakhan Rumble. I would say that the things that we're most excited about include the new keyword overkill, but then in addition to that, the idea of what Spirits and Loa's relationship to the set as a whole are, the combinations that come therein, and then of course the champion at the head of each and every team. The champions being legendary cards, each one of those gets one, it's the head of the team, so there's only one of them. And the Loas are also very specific animal gods that they embody the powers of, so they are also the other legendaries. The Spirits will pick up a rare status, which means that you get 2 per deck if you wish to construct your deck that way, but there's a ton of other combinations that come after that, and these are only the beginning, so we can't wait to see what players do with them.
There's a lot of different cards to really sell that flashy move onto the board and really sell the style of Rastakhan Rumble, and I'm really excited to see all the gameplay of it.
What tribes are you both favoring? Who's your Loa?
Kragwa. We had a meeting kind of going over what the set would be, and I just happened to sit in, we were cheering for different Loas, and I happened to sit in the Kragwa section. And Dave Kosak coined the chant for Kragwa, and it really spoke to me. So.
Those are the frogs, right?
Yes,
yeah.
the shaman. So I'm very excited for that one.
I'm a big fan of Captain Hook Tusk and her sharks.
Also.
Mostly because pirates. Secondly, because pirates. But then the fact that she is an advent of the team itself, we really look at a lot of the trolls from World of Warcraft as inspiration for it. But in the case of Captain Hook Tusk, she's unique to Hearthstone, and the team that she leads is something that is sure to have delightful surprise for everybody with all the different combinations and things that she can do. There's cannons, there's cannonballs, and a bunch of pirates, including a nice big parrot that's going to make an appearance as well.
Sounds like someone's a big fan of the 1616 Von Cleveland. Very excited for this. How long has Rastakhan Rumble been in the works?
Well, this one's a unique one actually because I would say trolls as a whole is something that we have had on the whiteboard at any one given time as far back as Karazhan, honestly. Every time we end up talking about a new set, we end up covering whiteboards in the room about what about this theme, what about this vibe, what about these things that we can put in here. And trolls comes up and then it goes away. And then it comes up again in a slightly different way and then it goes away. And this time when it came up, somebody started drawing allusion to the idea of the Loas and the Spirits and a lot of things that the Warcraft team was doing with them in Battle for Azeroth, and it was like, that's what we've been missing. Trolls by themselves are great and super interesting, but to be able to put them on top of them, the idea of these animal spirits and Loas as well, and we immediately went to more of a gladiatorial type of a combat situation because if we lean into just the animal version of the Loas, well, that feels super gladiatorial too. You've got your lions and your tigers and your bears, oh my, out on the show floor. In addition to all the champions, it just immediately started to come together in a way that in the years previous it hadn't.
I think it's also really nice because the stars kind of aligned for Rastakhan Rumble to come out close to Battle for Azeroth. So you have World of Warcraft players who see these similar characters and the Loa, and it's this new vibe on it. But if you're not familiar with World of Warcraft, you still can jump into Hearthstone and experience the same great, mighty power of the troll race.
Excellent. So we heard from Peter Whalen in yesterday's What's Next for Hearthstone segment that the Loa will be embodying the direction for these tribes for each of the 9 classes. So as an art director and software engineer, could you describe the process of relaying those similarities to these classes?
I think that our play test really helped develop the identity for the Loa and the classes. I know design did a lot of work because there's a lot more than 9 Loa, and so they were drawing conclusions of what feels great with this class, but my involvement really is with the play test and playing with the Loa in a class and saying, does this really feel like a rogue? Does this really play well with other cards? And so in that aspect, I helped kind of shape that feedback for the Loas themselves.
I think when it comes to the classes and how we build a lot of the personality into them, really the idea of class and team is an interchangeable idea for Rastakhan's Rumble. So if you're the priest, it's the priest team, or Wansambi zombies. But it really is like class and team kind of combined into one. And the way we end up doing that is looking at what are the mechanics that one expects from something like priest. It's probably obviously either healing or shadow. I give you one guess as to which one Bronslami moves into. But the idea that it still feels priest even though we're talking now about a team. The colors are very similar. It's colors that you would expect from a priest class. There will be a lot of education of the player that doesn't have to happen because we've still got a lot of those shapes and color forms that we've always associated with those class. They've just now taken on the raiment of a gladiatorial combat or a different animal than maybe is used to being associated.
We mentioned the combat and the mechanics for Rastakhan going to it's launching next month pretty much. Is there any particular elements of Rastakhan that you both enjoyed working on the most?
I think you kind of touched on it for me at least, which is the how do we convey this class or team to come through in Rastakhan Rumble with the idea of these animals, the colors, what's the champion we're choosing for it from the trolls that were present, and then ultimately what form that spirit takes. That combination was so fun and compelling in working on it. The idea that when you log in, getting one of those champions, I'm sorry, not one of the champions, but one of the Loa and two of their associated spirits feels like exactly the right kind of thing to give players right out of the gate because we want them to experience that combination right away. And getting to see people build decks around just even those 3 cards is going to be super awesome and compelling day one.
I think that the champions provide a kind of different deck building opportunity as it synergizes with some other cards. So you can even use the spirit of the whatever Loa outside of the Loa because it can still synergize with the other cards in the class. So I'm excited to see kind of what decks get built out of this expansion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We were talking about decks earlier, and you mentioned designing more flashier cards. The audience is pretty hyped to see Void Contract be revealed from the Blizzcon. So, are we going to see a flashier set from Rastakhan?
I think so. I think it plays into Rastakhan's, vibe. And King Rastakhan himself is sitting at the head and watching all of this epic chaos go down in the arena, and these champions fight for their mighty Loa, and we wanted to sell that flashiness, and I think there's a good balance between flashy, over the top, and supporting cards. So we don't want it to be overpowered, but except for those special moments where you really want to sell that I crushed your minion and I did it even more than I had to,
I think that flashiness is going to come through in another way too. The design is certainly going to be there for it, but then when you consider the VFX group or the visual effects group and what they contributed to it too, each champion's got their unique come into play. The Loa certainly feel very powerful when they exhibit their powers or prowess, and the spirits even, as they start to kind of call back to these ancient gods and bring them into play, is all of the things that VFX was spending a lot of time making feel not just tied to the team or the class, but also feel very, this is what it means for a god to enter the arena and fight on behalf of their champion. I mean, it's really a lot of cool whoa moments as you're playing.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
We're talking these big flasher moments of these gods, these Loas, but I want to talk to a common man, the neutrals. They sort of seem pretty mysterious at this stage of the reveal. Like we've seen neutrals successfully relay the themes of past expansions to great success. Most notably in a similar theme, the Grand Tournament. So with Rastakhan coming out, what kind of neutrals might we expect from Rastakhan to complement that gladiatorial theme that's now?
Sharkfin Fan was revealed, and though it is not a flashy, card, but it really does sell the feeling of the stadium and that everyone around you has this energy and is cheering, and maybe they're throwing ice cream into the arena, or maybe they're cheering as their champion just took down an enemy. But so that was one I think that helps sell that feel of a crowd.
And I don't think he's alone. I think when you consider that if there's 2 rare spirits and 1 Loa, you've still got 27 more cards you've got to fill that deck out with. And there's a ton of neutral minions already in existence, honestly, with the previous couple sets, but then looking at this new set as well that will play right into some of what these spirits and these Loas are able to give you, there are really a lot of opportunities for players to come up with some things that maybe we haven't even played with yet or considered, though after 1,000 some odd play test with the design team, there's a lot of them there that we're looking forward to seeing players discover.
Okay, so speaking of the card, you've only seen like a few cards so far being revealed from Rasta Kahn, but most of them seem geared towards rewarding damage and wide board presence. We've seen that with Harith being revealed for like more swarm style decks, or Cannon Barrage rewarding a wide pirate themed board, and the overkill mechanic like record.
Sure.
It wants the player to deal damage. So, do we expect this set to be more aggressive with the cards we've seen so far? Or will there be other cards revealed during the spoiler season that will give more control-oriented set?
I think you definitely should be excited for the card reveals coming up. There's going to be a lot of different options, a lot of different decks to build around both control and also aggro.
Yep. I think if you looked at Shirvala the Tiger, for instance, she comes in pretty overcosted, to your hand, but that's not asking you to deal a lot of damage per se, to your point of the aggressiveness of it. It's just asking you to be very careful and cautious about how much mana you get to spend on some spells to cost her down as soon as possible. And a lot of those spells don't even have to be attack in nature, they're just spells and mana spent on it. So seeing what players do with that, and do they make an aggressive deck out of that, or are they doing one that's really helping shore up the back end of gameplay so that when she does come into play, she comes in for free possibly, and she's starting to lay waste to that arena at that point. So it might be very conservative play up front to allow for that. I think there's a lot of different opportunities. I certainly don't think every hero is going to enter the ring swinging. So
that's a great example.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That almost sounds like a small callback to Molten Giant on that. So I actually, and in that line actually, so in yesterday's press conference, Peter Blunt also revealed how the spirits were somewhat of a callback to the quest mechanic that was introduced from Unguro, where at least explore like a similar theme of being accomplish a cool effect and you have to stick. So how did past experiences factor into the development of Rastakhan, or what lessons from past sets are going into this set coming out?
I think that every set we end up designing for, creating art for, creating visual effects for, are always little mini lessons in and of themselves, and it's always with an eye to not just the sets that we've created previously or even still in ladder, but also the sets we have yet to come. We tend to work about a year in advance, and what I mean by that is not we're on the third set coming up in 2019, but rather we're working on as many as 3 sets simultaneously, putting us about a year out in some form or another. So as we are doing that, we are always looking towards the next set and the next set, and making sure that everything, there's a line, there's kind of a thread through all of these, that players are going to get the most from each and every set and not feel as though these are self-contained, or even that we don't have the opportunity, because we have plenty of it, to learn from each of these sets as we go. And there's been things that have been brought up for the next set and the set after, as we've learned some things with Rastakhan's Rumble that remain to be seen yet, and we're really excited for all of those things.
Yeah, I think that with regards to that, the designers, because they work so far in advance, they look at cards for the whole kind of season. So Year of the Raven, back to Witchwood, what cards are they going to introduce in Witchwood that are going to be in play for Rastakhan's Rumble? And so they're very conscious of that as they are designing expansions, and we're giving feedback.
So I also want to talk about champions now.
Sure.
Hexlord Malakras is the only champion we've seen so far at this point, and it has a pretty cool ability that changes how we as a player might approach the Mulligan stage, and this seems specific to Mage.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if we're going to see, or if we're going to expect other effects from the set to change how players build their decks or experience Hearthstone.
I think with every expansion we have that intention. With Boomsday Project, we brought in puzzles which totally mixed up kind of the Hearthstone mindset and what a game is, and the magnetic as well, keyword to that effect. And I think in this set we also have those same expectations of how can we change things up, how can we keep it fresh, how can we keep it exciting, and also empower our players to create these awesome decks that we don't even think of.
I think that Hexlord Malakras kind of draws that for design and for everybody on the team, that kind of moment of, God, can I build a deck around that really plays to this? What would that even look like? And it's kind of a similar feeling I had when I was building my first, like, Rin, the first Disciple deck, where it's like, come on, how often is this really gonna go off? But really continuing towards the dream. Like, am I gonna get the thing that this promises, and is it gonna be fun along the way where I'm gonna actually get to see my opponent's deck destroyed in Rin, the first Disciple, or am I gonna pull this legendary that I'm only supposed to have one of in my deck, and I'm somehow able to get two by the fact that I kept him or her, whatever that legendary is, out of my initial mulligan.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing. It's a lot of fun to try to figure out how am I gonna make this work for me.
Definitely.
Looking forward to all the 3 crafting.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things was the Weasel Priest deck, which totally took me by surprise, and I loved it. I was like, this exactly is the chaos I'm looking for. And so I can't wait for players to come up with these decks that you don't think of, and you're like, I don't think this mechanic was meant this way, but like, it totally works.
Fun is fun.
Yeah.
So, last question. Rastakhan comes out in 1 month, as of tomorrow. What's left for Team 5?
Well, as you were saying, working this many sets ahead, we've got all of 2019, ready to go and looking at some really fun stuff coming our way. Honestly, I think it's just a combination of what are we doing with the meta, how is Rastakhan's Rumble going to change how people build decks, how much are people going to really enjoy the PvE portion of this as well, where we're going back to a dungeon run style with some really significant twists to it, and then how's that going to inform the 3 sets occupying 2019. We really believe Rastakhan's Rumble is going to close out the Year of the Raven in style, over style maybe, and we're really looking forward to seeing how players end up manipulating the meta as a result.
Yeah, single player content I'm pretty excited for, which drops December 13th. And the Tavern Brawl on the floor is a little taste into what you might be able to expect from the single player content.
Well, I know I'm going next. Cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much,
Awesome,
gang.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Our star is born.